There are places on Earth where the planet itself feels unfinished, where the land looks raw, exposed, as if the rules that govern the rest of the world do not fully apply. These are not destinations in the usual sense. They are limits, edges, thresholds, where geography, time, and human presence begin to thin. For most of human history, the idea of the edge of the world was not metaphorical. It was real. Sailors feared it. Maps warned of it. Beyond certain mountains, deserts, oceans, and ice fields, people believed the Earth simply ended, not in a dramatic fall, but in silence, emptiness, and death. And even today, in an age of satellites and global maps, those edges still exist. Not as blank spaces on paper, but as regions where the planet resists control, where nature operates on its own scale, indifferent to borders, technology, and ambition. These are the places where Earth reminds us that we are not its owners, only temporary visitors. The edge of the world is not one location. It is a pattern. It appears where tectonic plates collide and refuse to settle, where altitude steals oxygen from the air, where heat or cold pushes biology to its breaking point, where isolation stretches across thousands of years, allowing time itself to behave differently. In these places, human presence becomes fragile. Villages thin out, roads grow uncertain, sound carries farther, silence becomes heavier. The land does not invite, it tolerates. One of the clearest signs that you are approaching the edge of the world is the way the environment simplifies. Trees disappear, colors reduce. Life does not vanish, but it becomes deliberate. Every movement costs energy. Every organism is shaped by constraint. At high altitude, the sky deepens into an unnatural blue. The air feels hollow, as if something essential has been removed. Breathing becomes conscious. The body slows. Thought sharpens. People who live here do not rush, not out of philosophy, but necessity. At extreme latitudes, the sun behaves strangely. Days stretch into endless light or collapse into months of darkness. Time loses its rhythm. The human mind, evolved for cycles and repetition, begins to drift. In deserts, sound is swallowed. Wind erases tracks within minutes. The land does not remember you. It does not acknowledge arrival or departure. These are not landscapes designed for comfort. They are environments where the planet reveals its deeper mechanics: erosion, pressure, gravity, radiation, and time working without interruption. And yet, humans have always been drawn to these edges, not to conquer them, despite the stories we tell, but to understand something fundamental. Because at the edge of the world, the noise of civilization fades, and the questions become simpler and heavier. Who are we when survival is not guaranteed? What remains when distraction disappears? Why do certain places inspire fear, reverence, and silence across cultures that never met? Throughout history, societies living near these boundaries developed something in common: a different relationship with space and meaning. Where resources were scarce and life precarious, belief systems became anchored to the land itself. Mountains were not obstacles, they were beings. Rivers were not utilities, they were lifelines with memory. The sky was not background, it was instruction. Spiritual traditions did not emerge here as decoration. They evolved as survival frameworks, ways to interpret uncertainty, risk, and isolation. That is why the world's highest plateaus, deepest deserts, and most remote islands are often saturated with ritual. Not because people there are more mystical, but because the land demands attention. It does not allow indifference. At the edge of the world, mistakes are not abstract, they are final. This is why ancient trade routes avoided the deepest edges but traced their borders. Why early civilizations formed in valleys, not summits. And why those who crossed into the extremes were remembered, not always as heroes, but as warnings. Yet some stayed. They stayed in places where crops barely grew, where winter could last most of the year, where isolation severed contact for generations. And over time, these communities adapted, biologically, culturally, psychologically. Their languages slowed, their architecture folded into the land, their understanding of time expanded. To live at the edge of the world is to accept limits, and in doing so, to see more clearly. Modern civilization is built on the illusion of control. Climate systems are modeled, landscapes are reshaped, night is erased by light. Distance collapses into hours. But at the planet's edges, those illusions fail. Machinery breaks. Signals disappear. Weather dominates. The Earth reasserts scale. In these places, a human footprint fades within days, sometimes within minutes. That is why scientists study these regions closely. Not because they are empty, but because they are honest. They show how Earth functions without constant intervention, how ecosystems regulate themselves, how life persists under pressure. They are natural laboratories, not for convenience, but for truth. As global systems destabilize, climate, biodiversity, water cycles, these edges gain new importance. They act as buffers, archives, and warning signals. When something shifts here, it means the planet itself is adjusting. And yet, paradoxically, these same places are often the last to be protected because they seem distant, harsh, unproductive. But history shows a pattern. When the world changes rapidly, survival knowledge does not come from comfort zones. It comes from margins. The edge of the world is where adaptation is tested first. This is where we begin our journey. Not toward a single place, but toward a category of landscapes where Earth still speaks in its own voice. Unfiltered, uncompromised. Places where the ground rises too high, where the sea falls too deep, where heat, cold, wind, and silence reshape everything. Places that force one simple realization: the world does not need us. But we may one day need the world, exactly as it is here. The edge of the world is where maps stop being confident. Lines become suggestions. Distances lose precision. What looks close can take days to cross, and what appears empty often hides complexity beyond imagination. One of the most defining characteristics of these places is isolation. Not the romantic kind, but the structural kind. Isolation measured not in kilometers, but in difficulty, in effort, in consequence. An island surrounded by thousands of kilometers of open ocean is isolated. A plateau lifted 5 kilometers into the sky is isolated. A desert where water exists only underground is isolated. A polar region where darkness lasts half a year is isolated. In each case, isolation acts as a filter. Only certain forms of life pass through. Only certain behaviors persist. This is why the edges of the world produce extremes, not monsters, but specialists. At high altitude, oxygen scarcity reshapes biology. Human populations that have lived for thousands of years, above 4,000 meters, develop larger lung capacity, denser blood vessels, altered hemoglobin behavior. These are not adaptations anyone chooses. They are the price of remaining. In cold extremes, metabolism changes. Fat distribution, circulation, even perception of temperature shifts over generations. In deserts, water efficiency becomes the defining trait. Nothing is wasted. Nothing is abundant. At the edge of the world, evolution does not reward speed or strength. It rewards balance. This principle applies to cultures as much as bodies. Societies that survive on the margins tend to develop long-term thinking. Short-term extraction fails quickly. Overuse destroys the system. There is no external supply to compensate for mistakes. That is why traditional communities in extreme environments often appear conservative, ritualized, repetitive. From the outside, this looks like stagnation. In reality, it is stability. Ritual is not decoration. It is memory. When survival depends on timing, when to move herds, when to plant, when to travel, mistakes cannot be corrected later. Knowledge must be preserved precisely. Story becomes storage. Belief becomes instruction. The edge of the world forces cultures to encode survival into meaning. This is also why these regions are rich in myth, not fantasy, but explanatory frameworks. When a storm can erase a settlement, it becomes a being. When a mountain controls water, weather, and safety, it becomes sacred. Sacred does not mean unreal. It means untouchable. The modern world struggles to understand this. We separate utility from meaning. Land is measured by output. Mountains are obstacles or resources. Rivers are infrastructure. At the edges, this separation never occurred. There, land is not owned. It is negotiated with. And negotiation implies limits. Another defining feature of the planet's edges is time distortion. In environments where change is slow, frozen ground, arid plateaus, deep ocean basins, the past does not disappear easily. Footprints can last years. Ruins remain sharp for centuries. Geological layers are exposed rather than buried. This creates a constant presence of deep time. People living there are not surrounded only by the present. They are surrounded by evidence. Evidence that others came before. Evidence that climates shifted. Evidence that nothing lasts indefinitely. In such places, progress is not imagined as acceleration. It is imagined as continuity. The idea of endless growth feels absurd when the land itself sets absolute limits. This is why many of the world's edge regions resisted modernization, not through rebellion, but through incompatibility. Industrial systems require predictability. Marginal environments do not provide it. Roads crack. Machines fail. Supply chains collapse. Maintenance costs exceed benefit. The Earth pushes back, quietly, persistently. And yet, in recent decades, the edges have become targets. As central regions saturate, humanity looks outward. High plateaus for energy, deserts for minerals, polar zones for shipping, deep oceans for extraction. Technology extends reach, but it does not eliminate cost. It simply delays it. Each time an edge is breached, the question is the same. can the system absorb disturbance without collapsing? History suggests the answer is usually no, because edge environments function as closed systems. Their stability depends on narrow margins. Remove one component, and the balance shifts. This is why biodiversity at the margins is often both sparse and irreplaceable. Fewer species, but each one carries more responsibility. Lose one, and the structure weakens. This pattern repeats everywhere, from isolated islands to alpine valleys to polar seas. Edges are not empty. They are efficient, and efficiency leaves no room for excess. Another paradox of the edge of the world is attraction. Despite danger, discomfort, and isolation, humans are drawn to these places repeatedly. Explorers, pilgrims, scientists, monks, exiles. Each group arrives for different reasons, but stays for similar ones. At the edge, distraction disappears. There's no abundance of choice, no constant noise, no illusion of safety. The mind is forced inward. This is why so many spiritual traditions associate extremes with clarity. Fasting, silence, altitude, isolation. All remove layers of interference, not to escape reality, but to confront it without filters. In comfortable environments, meaning can be postponed. At the edge, it cannot. That is why people who return from these places often struggle to describe them. Language fails, photographs flatten scale, maps erase experience. The edge of the world is not a view, it is a condition where human presence is provisional. And this provisional status creates humility or fear, sometimes both. In modern culture, fear of emptiness is profound. Silence is filled. Darkness is avoided. Distance is collapsed. The edges challenge this instinct directly. They remind us that absence is not failure, that silence is not a problem to solve, that not everything exists for use. This realization is uncomfortable and necessary, because as planetary systems destabilize, humanity faces a choice: either attempt to dominate every remaining edge, or learn from them. Learn how systems self-regulate. Learn how limits preserve longevity. Learn how restraint enables survival. The edge of the world is not a future destination. It is a lesson that has always been present. The question is whether we will listen before it disappears, because edges do not last forever. Once roads arrive, silence breaks. Once extraction begins, balance shifts. Once isolation ends, specialization weakens. The edge moves or vanishes, and when it does, the planet becomes flatter, louder, simpler, and more fragile. Which is why documenting, understanding, and respecting these places is not nostalgia. It is preparation. Preparation for a world where stability may no longer be the default, where humanity may once again need to think in terms of limits rather than expansion, and where survival knowledge from the margins may become central. The edge of the world has always been ahead of its time. We are only now beginning to catch up. The edge of the world has never been fixed. It shifts as humanity advances, retreats, adapts, and forgets. What once lay beyond maps becomes connected. What once demanded reverence becomes a resource. And what once enforced humility becomes background. But the planet does not forget. Even when roads reach the margins, the underlying rules remain. Altitude still thins the air. Cold still steals heat. Distance still isolates. Extraction still carries cost. The edge does not disappear, it hardens. What changes is our perception of it. For centuries, the edge of the world was framed as a boundary to be crossed, a challenge to overcome, a test of endurance, courage, and technology. This narrative shaped exploration, empire, and progress. But at no point did the Earth agree to this framing. From a planetary perspective, edges exist for a reason. They absorb stress, they regulate systems, they slow change, they preserve diversity by limiting access. In ecology, margins are called buffer zones. In geology, they are fault lines. In climate science, they are stabilizers. Remove them, and instability spreads inward. This is not metaphor, it is mechanism. When polar ice retreats, ocean circulation changes. When high plateaus warm, monsoon systems shift. When deserts expand, atmospheric patterns reorganize. The edge of the world is not separate from the center. It holds the center in place. This is why the most dramatic signals of planetary change appear first at the margins. Glaciers melt before cities flood. Permafrost collapses before infrastructure fails. Species disappear in isolated ecosystems before mass extinction becomes visible. The edges speak early, quietly, unforgivingly. And yet, those signals are often ignored because they arrive far from population centers, out of sight, out of concern. This blindness is not accidental. Modern civilization is optimized for density, speed, and return. Marginal environments do not fit that logic. They resist scaling. They punish shortcuts. So they are treated as expendable. But history shows that when edges collapse, the center follows. The Roman Empire expanded beyond its ecological capacity. Forests vanished, soil eroded, frontiers failed first, and then stability unraveled inward. The same pattern repeats across civilizations. Collapse rarely begins at the core. It begins where resilience is lowest and margins are narrow. Which brings us to the present. For the first time in human history, there are no untouched edges left. Every extreme environment is now influenced by global systems. Climate change, pollution, noise, light, temperature, chemistry. Even the deepest ocean trenches contain plastic. Even polar ice carries industrial residue. Even high plateaus register atmospheric shifts. The illusion of separation is gone. And yet, some edges still function. Barely. They function not because they are untouched, but because their limits still exceed our reach. For now, these remaining edges are not refuges for humanity. They are reference points. They show what the Earth looks like when interference is minimal. They show how systems behave when feedback loops are intact. They show what balance actually means, not in theory, but in practice. In these places, growth is slow. Recovery takes decades. Change is deliberate. Nothing happens instantly. This slowness is often mistaken for fragility. In reality, it is strength. Fast systems break easily. Slow systems endure. The edge of the world teaches this without words. It teaches that abundance is not resilience, that control is not stability, that expansion is not survival. These lessons are uncomfortable because they contradict the logic of modern life. We are taught to optimize, accelerate, extract. The planet's edges teach us to limit, observe, and wait. This is why people who spend time in extreme landscapes often return altered, not enlightened, but recalibrated. Noise tolerance drops, Consumption feels excessive. Urgency feels artificial. It is not that the edge offers answers. It removes distractions. And in that removal, priorities reorder. This is also why many cultures considered edges sacred. Not because they were supernatural, but because they were instructional. Sacred does not mean untouchable. It means consequential. You do not act carelessly in places where consequences are immediate. At the edge of the world, every decision carries weight. There is no buffer of convenience, no infrastructure to absorb error, no crowd to disappear into. You are visible to the land, to yourself. This visibility is rare, and as the world becomes increasingly mediated, screens, networks, simulations, direct confrontation with scale becomes essential. Not for adventure, for perspective. The future of humanity will not be decided by how fast we move forward, but by how well we understand limits. Limits of water, limits of soil, limits of climate stability, limits of biological tolerance. The edge of the world has always lived with limits. That is why it still exists. The question now is whether we treat these places as warnings or as the last reserves to exploit. Because once the edges are gone, there is nothing left to slow collapse. No buffer, no margin, no quiet system correcting imbalance. A planet without edges is not unified. It is exposed. And perhaps that is the final truth these places offer. The edge of the world is not where Earth ends. It is where human illusion ends, where the idea of dominance dissolves, where the scale resets, where presence replaces possession. These landscapes do not ask to be saved. They ask to be understood. And understanding begins with restraint. To stand at the edge of the world is to feel something modern life rarely allows: proportion. You are small. The system is vast. Time is deep. And yet, your actions matter, not because they conquer, but because they ripple. The edge does not need us, but it remembers us. What remains to be seen is whether we will remember it, not as a frontier, but as a teacher. Because the future will belong not to those who reach the farthest, but to those who learn how to stop.